ladies, my name is Chelsea Harris and I'm the founder of a beautiful company called Inspired Mama, but I'm also on the side mother to an energetic 4 little boys. Now, I'm a businesswoman and also a mum, and so I firsthand understand the challenges of balancing the successful career with a busy family life. Now, my journey actually began 2 decades ago in public education, while I was working really closely with struggling families. Now, this experience, coupled with my own motherhood journey, led me to create the company Inspired Mama. As a result of that, I retrained as a health coach, a mindset coach, I became a personal trainer, and I also upskilled as a nutrition coach to provide this comprehensive support for working mothers. For the past 7 years, I've been consulting, coaching, and training women worldwide, offering streamlined health solutions and personal development courses. So the Inspired Mum programs address the 3 core challenges that women face. It's a lack of time, stress management, and fatigue from just trying to juggle way too many responsibilities. So today I'm really excited to dive into the crucial topic that allows us to strive and excel in both our personal and our professional lives. This is being burnout proof. We're going to talk about the energy equation that keeps us going and how we can maintain it. So in this session, there are 4 key components that we're going to discuss which feed into the human battery. They are our nutrition, our hydration, our sleep, and our stress management. And so throughout the training, I'm going to share some really practical strategies to optimize each of these areas, helping you boost your energy levels and prevent that burnout. We're also going to identify some of those sneaky everyday stresses that can just pile up for a woman, drain our energy without us even realizing. I promise you that by the end of this training, you're going to have some actionable steps to create a more balanced and energized life. So ladies, if you're ready to become burnout proof, let's dive in. What I want to talk about today is being burnout proof and how you can have plenty of energy. As a health coach, I've noticed that there are many women who come into wanting to lead a healthy lifestyle and they want to excel within their career. They want to be really great mums. They want to have wonderful relationships, but they really want to excel within their health. And what they do is they push far too hard too soon. So what happens when we aim too high? Women burn themselves out when they try and change too much too quickly. When you come in, you've already got this full plate and then you're trying to add more into the routine. You're trying to add more into the family life. You're trying to exercise more, manage food better, manage the career better, the business, whatever it is that the venture is that you're working on. There's this overcommitment to how much you think that you're going to complete in the day. And you don't have the strategies to be able to manage that. You just keep adding things to the list and adding more to the list. And then eventually what happens is you burn yourself out. Also, another problem that I see with women when they're trying to up the ante too soon or they're trying to change their habits very drastically, very quickly, is that they compare themselves. So women can look at them, other influencers, or they can look at their friends and they can look at these lifestyles and these circumstances and they can think, I should be able to do that. But the thing is that your life is different to everybody else's. And you may have your husband that works away, or you might have kids with special needs, or you might have children with heaps of extracurricular activities, or you might have a really large work schedule, or you might have all of that stuff. And then what's happening is you're comparing your life to someone else and you're thinking, I need to be doing that. But your expectations around what you can complete should not be the same as theirs. And what happens is when we start to compare ourselves with those people, we feel inadequate. We talk negatively to ourselves because we don't know what the background is of that person or how much time they've invested in their routine or their time management in order to get to that space. Now, the problem is that when we hit this point and we start to feel like we're comparing ourselves to each other, we feel like we're stuck in this space where we don't measure up. We can go into this all or nothing mindset. If I can't perform at my peak and I can't work out this many times and I can't have my nutrition perfectly on track, then I'm not going to do anything at all. And that can create this real big spiral. I'm either on the wagon or I'm off the wagon. And I'm here to help you break that cycle. I really want to get to this point where we gradually, slowly build yourself up to a point where you can cope with the workload. And then also you can gradually add more to your plate and up the ante. The problem is when we get into this mental space where we're totally depleted, we neglect our emotional health. So the first thing that slides off the table when people feel like they're overwhelmed, they've got too much on their plate, they're lacking time, they're feeling stressed, the first thing that goes is all their mental wellness practices. Nobody is meditating. Nobody is journaling. Nobody's doing any time for self-care. And what happens when we don't do that? We fall into a bundle. That's what equals burnout. It's like you're being pulled from pillar to post and there's so much going on and you can't cope with it. And that's why when it comes to changing our habits, you can't come into a program, not that you know that I don't advocate this in acceleration, but thinking of like when you joined 6-week programs or other things in the past and just expect to overhaul your life overnight, make all these changes and just implement it. Because I've made a decision yesterday that I want to be a healthy person tomorrow. And I'm not going to pay any attention to the fact that I've done these habits for the last 30 years. I'm just going to implement and make changes as of now. It doesn't work like that. And so one of the major things to making sure that you don't hit burnout is making sure that your physical resources, as in like the energy in which your body is producing and the way in which your mind is coping and the strategies that you have on the ground for your time management and how you nut out how your life and all the logistics work together, they have to move together. You can't just focus on one aspect and think that you can nail that and then the rest is going to come together. All of these things work in unison, right? So I want you to think of the last time that you tried to reach one of your goals, and maybe it was one that you were really excited about at first. But as time progressed, it all just seemed a little bit too hard. It required a hell of a lot of energy, and gradually you fell back into your old routine because you felt burnt out. You abandoned it. Now, this is what I call the snapback effect. This is when you push so hard and you go too fast, you implement way too much, and then you just bounce back to your old self because you're like, I can't sustain that. There's too much on my plate. I'm not coping with that. And you go back to your old self. And we were talking about how you push, and then you up the ante. And then there was this mental moment in which you were like, I can't do it. And you defaulted back to old behavior. That's what the snapback is. It's when we just expect too much of ourselves and we're just not at that point yet. Okay? It's when what you're trying to implement is too far removed from your current reality and it's going to burn up all your energy. So I want you to think of stuff that you've done in the past, and I want you to think, what were you trying to implement back then that has burnt you out, that you couldn't sustain, and then you snapped back to your old self? What was it that system or that approach wasn't working for you? Because we can learn a lot from that, can't we? But the problem is people do that and then they think, oh, I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't committed enough, or I just wasn't organized enough, and that's why I didn't see that through. But it's maybe parts of that strategy might have worked for you, but maybe you implemented it too quickly. Or maybe what you were actually expecting from yourself wasn't something that you could do for the next 40 years. Maybe it was a short-term thing that was probably never going to happen forever. Or maybe you had more kids, or your work got busier, or circumstances changed in life. And then that approach now didn't fit in with this new reality. So I want to give you a minute. What is it that you've done in the past that's made you snap back to your old self? Sukara's written, calorie counting made her snap back to herself. And the challenge with calorie counting is that we have grown up in this diet culture where we are so exposed to this idea that we're meant to fit into this box, and our life is meant to look like this, and our food is meant to look like this, and it should like this every single day. And then when it doesn't look like that perfect box, we go, I can't do this, I can't stick at it. And so we like hands off and we go off and we do whatever the other tangent is. And the problem is that as soon as life gets busy, we don't have time. People don't have time to calorie count. They don't have time to work out all that stuff for macros and everything like that. It's very overwhelming. And so calorie counting can only happen when, one, maybe you have more time on your hands because you had less kids, or maybe you're a single woman. I could do it when I was a single woman because I didn't, like, what else was I doing with my time? I don't really know what I was doing. I thought I was busy, but I had plenty of time to do calorie counting, put it into my MyFitnessPal app. Did it work for me? No, it didn't. Then that's what, as soon as I started having children, I kept snapping back to my old self because that system wasn't working for me anymore. And I couldn't understand how I was going to get past this whole calorie counting concept. The next thing Sanya has written is trying to exercise every single day after not exercising for 2 years. And this can happen, Sanya, because what happens is women say, I'm just going to go back to who I was 2 years ago. Or 6 months ago. I was a fit person back then. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to do that again. And what happens is you burn yourself out. You mentally and emotionally deplete yourself. And that's your psychological and physiological resources that get depleted in that as well. Shalisa said, I was really unhappy with myself, and so I started the weight loss injections. I didn't change any existing habits. And then when I stopped taking the injections, I started to put on weight straight away because I haven't changed anything. And the challenge with taking stuff like Ozempic or those solutions or fat blasters or whatever it might be, the challenge is that what happens is we don't change our relationship with food. It's a band-aid approach, which doesn't change us on who we are in the long run. And so what you're doing now, changing your routine, becoming consistent, understanding how you're feeling in your body, it's a lifestyle change. And that's what stops you from snapping back to that old self. Guys, know that anytime we try to evolve from where we are to who we actually want to become to reach our goals, we create this mental tension between our old and our new selves. And this is psychological tension because we're like, I want to change. I want to establish these new patterns and self-image. I want to be this person. And there's this psychological tension of I'm so far from that person and how can I get there as quickly as possible because we get this goal in mind. And then there's also this biochemical tension, which is the biochemical state of our body. So the biochemical is thinking about, okay, what are the new behaviors that are required? What hormonal and mental space do I need to be in? How much energy do I need to on this? What is the way in which I need to think and behave and be in order to be able to perform as this person? For someone to get up and be someone who can wake up early, train every single day, manage their lives, meal prep consistently, manage their stress well, be consistent in or meditation, all those habits. There's a lot of mental discipline that is required to do that. And that's a lot of mental power that is going into that. Mental power has to come from somewhere. And so that's why today I'm talking to you about the energy that is required to have that mental power, to have that discipline. Because what happens is if you try and change yourself too quickly, and there's such a great identity gap, and you burn yourself out because you're trying to change everything at once, and you haven't got the structures in place to be able to support you as a gradual change, you're going to stress yourself out, you're going to burn energy, you're going to lack energy, and you're going to quit. So each self, our old self and our new self, is fighting for this residence within our mind. And the one that wins
is the one that avoids triggering your fight or your flight response. If you push yourself too hard, you will go back to your old self. That's what happens. We just go back to those old patterns of behavior. And that's why when we get so stressed or we get so overwhelmed, people go back to the emotional eating, or myself wanting to drink alcohol because that's what my parents did. And that's how they managed their stress when I was growing up. It's whatever you were shown. It's like whatever was demonstrated, and there's really strong neurological pathways that you have from a child. And so you got to think, when you get overwhelmed, you start to feel burnt out, you probably go back to what was demonstrated to you when you were a kid. So why is our new psychological needs deplete our biochemical resources? So why is it our mental state depletes our body so much? When you cross the threshold and you feel overwhelmed, your brain is going to switch into this mode and it's going to start to seek and preserve the limited energy supplied left for critical biological functions. And what happens is women then start to have excuses, experience brain fog, they feel tired, they start to avoid. And what happens when women do those things? The first thing they think is, I'm useless, I lack drive. But these are the early symptoms of burnout. So if you start to notice that you're pushing yourself really hard and then all of a sudden you're starting to procrastinate, you've got plenty of excuses, you're not doing the work, you don't really understand why, you're lacking drive, it's all just seems a bit too hard and you're starting to back off, it's because your body is pulling back and it's saying, I can't sustain this level of output long term because I just don't have the systems in place now for me to be able to cope with that next stage. Does that make sense? So how I explain it is, the problem is that when you're adding another goal to that already full task list without the correct strategies, I want you to imagine it's like taking a power station that is lighting the entire city at maximum capacity, and then you're suddenly just adding a whole city to that grid. What's going to happen? It cuts out. You plug in way too many things. You got the microwave, you got the kettle, you got the air fryer going, and then now you're like, yep, let's bang in the toaster. And then what happens? The house goes boom. That's exactly what happens to you guys. When you get to that point and there's too many things plugged in and you just don't have the resources to be able to handle it, you're going to max out your system and that safety switch is going to flip and you're going to go back to that old original settings because your brain's protecting you. It doesn't want you to feel exhausted. It doesn't want you to end up in a heap and not want to get out of bed. So it goes, that's it. We're pulling back. And that's what the brain fog, the lethargy, the excuses, the procrastination, that's the build-up phases of that. Now, of course, there is excuses, as in, I don't want to get out of bed and it's cold. And there's also excuses of, I'm bloody tired. Like I haven't slept all night. My kids have been hectic. There's two different excuses, right? You're flapping around. And then there's the other side of it, which is I'm genuinely exhausted and I can't do that this week. And that's okay. And that's why when I'm talking about managing the seasons of life, listening to your body and working out where you're at, if you're starting to procrastinate and you're starting to avoid and you're feeling really tired and you're flopping into bed at night and your fuse is getting short and you're feeling like you haven't got the patience with your kids and you're turning to more orange colored foods and you just feel like there's just not enough coping mechanisms and you feel like it's too much, we have to pull back. It's a season in life which we pull back and we expect less of ourselves. And that's why I'm always talking about working out, like, what are your non-negotiable habits? What can you keep in place? And then let's keep those ticking over. And it might just be one or two things that keep your head above water. Probably meal planning and having your nutrition sorted and getting adequate sleep. Try and get to bed and get enough sleep if you can. And then maybe do some type of restorative exercise or stress management so that you have something as downtime to restore your mental space. Now, when we push ourselves too hard or we neglect our self-care, which is one of the first things that slide off the table, we can deplete these biochemical resources. This leads to burnout, illness, lack of energy, and decreased overall function. So the key is to make gradual lifestyle changes that support and strengthen these resources over time. And then gradually you can up the ante, right? So who we want to be? We want to be the woman that's got increased energy and vitality. We want to be someone who's got great mental clarity and focus. We want to be someone who can regulate our emotions and have great emotional well-being. We don't want to be the screaming banshee of our kids. We want to have enhanced physical health and fitness and have the energy for it. We want to have great relationships, great social connections, feel like we actually want to attend the party, not be like, I don't want to talk to any humans, go away, shut the door. And then we want to have greater confidence and self-acceptance and, of course, this improved quality of life. But what brings about this? So there are 4 things that feed into the human battery. This is what we're going to be talking about today. First one is our nutrition. Now, what I want you to consider is how much thought goes into your nutrition before you actually eat the meal. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about how much energy actually goes into food before we even eat the meal? A lot of energy, right? There are the stages. We have to think, okay, what on earth are we going to eat? What are we going to snack on? What are the kids going to eat that I can cook for the family? Then you've got to think, okay, let's get all that food into the house and let's restock everything that the husband hasn't written on the shopping list and work out what's missing from the pantry and hunt around the fridge and see what all the missing items, maybe look in the bin and see what's been thrown out. Then we have to cook all the meals based on our energy, based on our time demands. And then we have to pray to God that there's leftovers. So you can see how there's a lot of things that go into nutrition before it even gets to us eating it. Now, the problem is that a lot of people don't think about these stages. They just go to the end, which is let's eat phase. But the problem is your energy in your body is fueled by your nutrition. And if you're eating higher amounts of, I'm going to call them the orange foods, but humans that are new to the program, it's if you're eating higher amounts of processed carbohydrates, packaged foods, additives and preservatives, and the stuff that can be prepared really quickly, you're not going to have a whole lot of energy. Our planning and our preparing for our food, and if you can streamline the bulk cooking process, you can save so much energy just from the thinking about the food, because some people are going to the shops every single day and thinking about what they're going to eat and what they're going to cook and what they're going to create for their family. But then also you can save a hell of a lot of energy because you actually just have food there ready to go and you're fueling your body correctly. Meal planning using the software. Now, I understand that you can use, there's other apps. I don't care whether you're cooking Inspired Mama recipes or not. That's not what I'm here to tell you, that you have to use the app. The reason why I recommend you using the app is because, one, it saves you so much time. It's going to pump out a shopping list. You can do this. It's doing the information for you. Gone are the days of sitting down with recipe books and thinking, oh yeah, I might cook that, and that one's saved on Pinterest, and that influencer put up that recipe, I'm going to do that one, because it's so stressful and you end up having to write this massive to-do list. So you've got to think, okay, I'm going to ideally use some kind of software to streamline the meal planning so that it reduces your stress, and you can do it in a couple of minutes. Otherwise, you're probably not going to do it. Next thing you need to think is, how can I cook 3 or 4 times a week, max? How can I structure my meals so that I can have 3 days off? Now, for myself, when I think of I'm going to cook 3 or 4 times a week, I think 1 has to be a bulk cook, or 2 have to be a bulk cook. 1 has to be on the table in under 30 minutes. And you guys know that you can filter this on the app. You can click the 3 dots and you can obviously filter on the table in under this amount of time or whatever. And then the final one has to be a slow cooker, or something that goes in the oven, something really easy. And then for my other 3 nights of the week, you think, well, what are you eating? I'm not starving, I'm not skipping my meals, and I'm not fasting. So it's the other nights I might be having leftovers. I might be having something that's coming from my freezer stock. I'm probably going to eat out 1 night minimum, and I'm going to have like a fake away meal or something, like homemade burgers or homemade pizzas or chips and fish or something like that I can pull out and throw it in the air fryer. But ideally, if you could get to the point where you're cooking less, you're going to reduce a lot of stress around how much time you spend in the kitchen and then doing all those dishes. The other thing to consider is think of the days in which you feel most fatigued, and then the days when you have less time to spend in the kitchen. For most ladies, if they're working full time, it's towards the end of the week. It might be like a Thursday. You might be saying, like, on a Thursday night, I actually don't want to cook. I don't want to do any dishes. Okay, that's fine. But let's make sure that either you're pulling from the freezer, you put a slow cooker on in the morning, or you've got something that you can throw in an air fryer that's going to work for you, and that you can have a salad bag and you could throw something in the air fryer or something. Make it easy for yourself. A lot of the meal planning, if you could just think, okay, how much time do I actually have on that day? And then how much energy do I have? And you designed your 3-4 meals that you cooked around that, you would find that you would save a hell of a lot of mental energy on your cooking and your meal prep every single week. So myself, I try and do my snack prep on a Monday morning. I do it when I'm doing all my kids' lunch boxes. I do 5 lunch boxes for my eldest for the week. I do all the snack prep for all the kids. I do my snack boxes on a Monday morning. It takes me like 20 minutes and I do the whole lot. Monday night, I do a mass bulk cook because I always want dinner buffers for the kids across the week. So if I want to eat like a green curry, then the kids can have freezer stock, or they can have something like that. That's my Monday night. Let's get 10, 12 serves out of it. And then my other nights, I try and have it on the table. I want it like 20 minutes. That's heaps for me. And so you've got to work out for you, like what works for you and where could that be and what that structure is, because that will just reduce your stress. Keeping in mind that if you're making snack boxes, guys, make them big enough that they could possibly be a lunch. So if you throw them in your bag and they're huge snack boxes, worst case scenario, you don't eat it. You put it back in the fridge. It's not a problem, right? But you're better having an abundance of food than not having enough and getting caught out, because there's nothing worse than being stuck at whatever with some child somewhere, not having, and then next thing you're like at the cafe at basketball and you're like, I'm going to have some hot chips. So you're like, snack box is empty, mama's bored, hot chips and Chico roll look pretty good, actually. So you've got to make sure you've got enough food and you want to eat it. You can't be like the woman with the hummus and the carrots and be looking at someone with the pizza pocket. You know what I mean? You're not going to want to do it. So make sure it's food that you actually want to eat. And I understand that that means that there might be more carbs in there or whatever, but if it's something that you're actually going to eat and you're going to enjoy it, it's worth it. The other thing I want you to consider with your meals is that with your meal colors, consider where you are in your cycle. So if you're hormonal and you're coming up to your period, and some people are hungry in the lead up to period, some are hungry post period. So know where you're at and where your colors are going to be loaded and how many carbs you might need, and also type of exercise. If you're doing huge amounts of exercise and you're feeling hungrier because your body's burning more, then of course, eat more of the blue foods, eat more of those carbohydrate foods. And also based on your workload. If you feel like mentally you're working really hard, your brain's using a hell of a lot of power, you're going to need more carbs in your diet as well. So thinking about the snack boxes, consider keeping a stash of nuts at your desk or in your car. Having protein bars or alternative things like that in your car and in your handbag. That's always great. Obviously, prepare your snack boxes so you've got some easy grab and go options. And then stock up on those sweet options or magic treats when you crave the sugar as well. Make sure you've got stuff that you can go to. Don't deplete and not have anything. So let's talk about hydration. This is the other one that everyone's like, yeah, I know more water, but nobody ever does it. So ideally, like you can squeeze it in by waking up first thing and having a glass of water first thing in the morning or having a herbal tea. Try and maybe replace your coffee with herbal tea just 2 to 3 times a week, or even try caffeine-free options. You could have decaf coffee and put that towards your water intake if you're a real caffeine fiend. Or of course, there's the peppermint and there's chamomile in there as well. The other thing is keep reusable water bottles everywhere. Put Post-its on them and try to drink them, because a lot of the time women confuse with hunger and they end up just eating more because they think they're hungry, but in fact they're thirsty, they're dehydrated. If you can get one of those bottles with markers on it for times, that's always helpful. If you've never paid any attention to those things like myself, then you might need to put reminders on your phone. That's going to help as well. Sleep. Yes, sleep. Now, sleep is one of those things that we have to be disciplined enough to get to bed on time and disciplined enough to get up at the right time. Now, the challenge with sleep is ideally you need to be getting to bed within the same 15-minute block in the night and in the morning, because it helps us set our circadian rhythm. But a lot of women are often pushing those boundaries. Now, a big thing with sleep is having a fixed time in which you're getting to bed, ideally across the weekend on the weekend. Even if you said I was going to do it the majority of the time. So if you said, okay, 4 nights of the week, I'm going to get to bed at whatever your time is, 9, 9:30, 10, whatever it might be. And then for the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it might be a different time. But if the majority of your week or the larger ratio to which you're getting to bed at the same time, you're waking up at the same time is pretty consistent, it does help set your circadian rhythm. It does make it easier to get up. What you'll find is if you're trying to get up at really early, 5 or 5:30 or something like that, and you're only doing it 2 or 3 days a week, you're always going to find it really hard because your circadian rhythm is set at the other time. And so when you're trying to get up early, it's like you're pulling yourself out of quite deep sleep. So ideally, if you can be more consistent with the time in which you want to get up, which might be the earlier time, you just find it's going to make your life a lot easier as well. And whenever you're trying to change your bedtime schedule, you never want to move it more than 15-minute increments, or wake up schedule, no more than 15-minute increments. And what I mean by that is if you're waking up at 6 o'clock now, you don't just suddenly say, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. because what happens is it's quite a large jump and you'll feel quite fatigued. But you have to remember that by the time you wake up at 5, 16 hours later, you're going to start to feel more tired. You do that for a couple of days and you can set your circadian rhythm. Your body wants to be awake for 16 hours and then it starts to feel tired. Often people think, oh, I'm going to get into bed and then get more sleep and then I'll have enough energy for tomorrow morning's workout. And I'm going to get out of bed. But then they get in bed and they lay in bed and they lay awake for an hour because it's not their normal sleep time. So what happens is if you say, I'm going to get up at this time and then force your 16 hours, and then you'll go to bed earlier and then you can set your rhythm that way, rather than trying to get to bed earlier and expect that you're going to have more sleep, because generally you haven't been awake long enough when you go to bed earlier, when you didn't wake up early that morning. The other thing to remember if your energy is actually having downtime in the evening, creating an evening routine in which you start to switch off, charging your phone away from your bed, ideally. Maybe having a dud phone that you could use, maybe setting up an iPad so that it hasn't got any of the distractions on it. It's just got your alarm, it's just got your meditation. You might choose to read a book or listen to calming music, maybe put the diffuser on, but having something that tells your body, I'm going to sleep now and I'm winding down. That's why if you have kids and you have family and you start to put on diffusers at night and you dim the lights, and your kids will start to produce their melatonin earlier, you can normally calm the whole family home down a lot earlier, which means, of course, then you can get to bed earlier too. So the home environment can make a big difference to children getting to bed on time and their routine as well, the stack of their routine. So keep that in mind as well. Now, the final one I want to talk about, and which is the biggest one of all, is our stress. So I want to touch stress because this is a major mental energy tax, and it also leads to burnout, right? If you want to get burnout, you just get stressed and it tips everything over the edge. Your nutrition's going to go downhill, your hydration is going to go downhill, and your sleep's going to go downhill because you're not going to get any sleep. You're overwhelmed and you're probably laying awake thinking about what's going on in your life. So we have a world global epidemic of stress at the moment. Women everywhere are feeling stressed, and it's not these macro, external, or uncomfortable events that are a problem, but it's for women, it's the sneaky everyday stresses of the outside world combined with this internal stress that we put on ourselves that we're creating in our own minds that's tipping people over the edge. Now, often some of these daily stresses that we have can seem so small that individually they don't really warrant our attention, and we don't really pay much attention to them. Your kid not finding their shoes every day is not going to kill you. It's going to turn you batty eventually. But the kid not finding their shoes and not having the uniforms washed and not having the lunch boxes clean and not having food in the house and feeling overwhelmed that you're behind in your work schedule and the long drive or commute to work and then the nagging boss, and then the ringing dinging. Those collections of things might drive you mad. Can you see how it's the small stuff that all adds up, right? It's like the collection of all the things. But the problem is a lot of these things are conveniently just woven into our lives. We don't actually notice them. So these are the stresses that zap our energy daily. They take us down because it's like this compound effect. Now I'm reading this book at the moment. It's called Unstressable, and it talked about this human's morning routine. And it was like, so this guy wakes up and he's got this alarm that's blaring and he's never even bothered to change the alarm. And it's this revolting sound that jolts you out of your sleep. And then he wakes up and he stubs his toe, and then he hasn't got coffee pods, and he's got to deal with his kids, and then he's running late and he hasn't got any food to take to work with him, and then he's got a boss that's hassling him, and it's like this compound of this dude's life. And I was like, the amount of women that I speak to, and they tell me that's their existence every single day, and that's how they feel when they wake up. You can understand why women will wake up and they don't feel excited about the day. If they've never consciously stood back and thought, what are all the minor stresses that tax me every single day, and what can I do to reduce, remove, or avoid them? And so I want to talk about the stress cycle that we go through. So we have these compound of little things that happen every day. It's like the house is messy. You have hungry kids. You have a mean colleague. You have this nasty boss's email. You have a stressed out partner. All of those are quite common things that we can deal on a daily basis. But there's ways in which they can trigger us. We can have this emotional trigger, which is like we get this body reaction. Our heart rate goes up. Our hormones are adjusted because, of course, we really produce cortisol. We start to sweat. Our mind starts to get really busy. Then our experience is we start to experience this fear or this anger. There's this like tension, this built up. When you just everything's going wrong, there's like this built up tension in your body. That's what they can start to experience. And then what happens is they don't have a resolution. If people don't have a way in which to deal with their stress and to exercise or to do deep breathing, this is stuff that builds up and actually drives you mental over a period of time. It just compounds, and your kids, your partners, your colleagues, just life in general, and all the demands of it from day to day. And if women don't have some resolution to look after themselves, to decrease that stress, then what happens is if that is broken, that link, it just leads to burnout. We're apathetic, we've got frustration, we feel guilt, we've got anxiety, we feel powerlessness, we have inabilities to solve problems, and we stay stuck in this cycle. But the problem is these don't stop triggering. These keep coming. And so this keeps getting worse. And then we think we don't have time for this. That's the problem. So what we have to work out today is, what are all these minor triggers for you? What are the things that tip you over the edge? The small minor things. And so what I want to do is I want you guys to get your journal out. I'm going to do it together because I actually did this activity myself a couple of nights ago. It's actually really helped me. I've had a wonderful couple of days because I was actually really conscious in thinking, what are the minor things that piss me off? And so I wrote in my journal and I was thinking, okay, what is it? So I'll get my journal out actually. Let's just read these bad boys. And you guys can add to them for yourself. So I want you to think, from the moment that you wake up to the time that you go to bed, what are the things that just compound and stress you out? So this was my stress assessment. The things that compound for me: having my kids interrupt me in the morning when I'm trying to journal. I'm part of a business program and their content is so badly structured that it like lags and it like wastes my time. And I have such a short amount of time in which I want to do personal development every morning. I only have 20 minutes and this guy craps on for 15 minutes of it. I get so angry because I haven't got any value out of it. And I realized that was a real trigger for me. So I'm like, I've got 20 minutes, mate, you're not getting to the point. That was really frustrating for me. The other thing I realized is that when I'm trying to work and I've got my kids home, that's a major trigger for me because I just feel like I can't get things done and they just keep interrupting me. It's when I feel like I'm putting habits in the wrong location. So I'm trying to work with the kids around, trying to food shop with the children. That's really fun. Having two 4-year-olds and a 6-year-old wrestle on the floor of Aldi and open packets unnecessarily, and a baby cree in the trolley. You want to tip someone over the edge? That'll do it. And then people look at me like, poor mother. Then getting sucked into slack throughout my day and not feeling like I'm getting through my work, not knowing what I'm going to cook, despite being the human who's meant to be meal planning, when I haven't written it on my fridge. All it takes is for me to write it on the fridge. And when I don't write it on the fridge, I don't know what I'm cooking. It causes me overwhelm because I haven't defrosted the meat. So simple. The other thing is not having Aston's uniform washed. Having transitioned from the fact that in summer I have 3 uniforms and in winter I only have 2, and I keep missing a day and not having the uniform. I realized that was a trigger because the kids always yelling at me, Mum, my clothes are dirty. And I was like, why are they dirty? But now I understand I have to do my washing days, right? So I went through and I wrote a list of all the things that stress me. And then what is it that I have to do to limit them, reduce them, or solve them? It's pretty simple. I was like, okay, what do I have to do? If the kids are going to interrupt me when I'm journaling, maybe I need to journal earlier. If the kids want my breakfast when I'm working out, make their breakfast and put it on the kitchen bench before I start working out. With the black belt content, stop listening to it in the 20 minutes. If he's going to ramble, don't listen to him. Listen to something else, someone who gets to the point. If I feel like I need to manage my kids and try and run the business, I'm doing the habit at the wrong time. Don't go food shopping with the kids. It's a nightmare. Don't do it. Don't get sucked into Slack. Turn off notifications. Not knowing what I'm going to cook. Write it on the meal planning board on your fridge. Change your washing days. Chelsea, that would solve the washing problem. Can you see what I mean? With those stresses that you experience, try and identify those mini sources of stresses in your life and just think about it. What are the things that drive me mad? And could I possibly attack these differently so I don't have to have this same conversation and this build up of stress every day pretty consistently? Because it really does zap your energy. It might be the computer work is long. Maybe you could catch the train and listen to a podcast, or maybe it's driving back from your kids' school drop off because it's been a stressful morning, the kids have been hectic, that you feel overwhelmed. So maybe put on relaxing music in your car or do an active meditation when you're driving. You know what I mean? Thinking, what can I do? So you can't get rid of the kids. I know it's a shame sometimes, but like we have to deal with them as best as we can. And sometimes putting structures in place to help us cope better allows us to maximize our energy so we don't get to this total burnt out, depleted state. I feel like it's the buildup of minor things over a period of time that makes you then your nutrition, your hydration, your sleep, everything else slide if you don't manage these minor stresses. So try and engage in these activities that bring you joy. Ideally, you could write a happy list. What are the things that make me happy? It might be putting on the diffuser, sitting outside in the sunshine, drinking a cup of coffee. Maybe write out a happy list and think, what aspects from the happy list could I bring into my life? And then the other thing is setting boundaries and learning to hold yourself accountable to them. And what I mean by that is if it's time to get off and go to bed and do something like a restorative practice that's actually going to help you de-stress, having the discipline to go to bed and do that without a phone so that you can actually wind down or do something for yourself or complete that happy list, not get sucked into the busyness of life. We talked about how your energy level changes when you get overloaded and how this impacts you mentally, physically, and also we know how it impacts a family unit. But I want you to think, what can you implement from today's session? What's your little takeaway that you're going to put into place from today's session that's going to help you improve your mental, your physical, and the family unit stress, overall energy, the way that you guys cope as a unit. Thank you so much for your time today, ladies. I want you to spend some time over the next week, think of all the micro stresses that are in your life that build up and think, okay, what can I do to tackle those as best as possible? Eliminate, remove, reduce.
Thank you so much for joining this session and becoming burnout proof. I hope you found these strategies valuable and are feeling empowered to take control of your energy equation. Now, if you'd like to access more of my free trainings, you can head over to inspiredmama.com. There are 12 additional resources which are designed to help you reduce your stress, improve your time management, and elevate your energy levels, which you can access completely for free. However, if you'd like to stay connected with daily tips and inspiration, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Chels_InspiredMama, on YouTube at InspiredMama, or we're on Facebook at InspiredMama_Chels. If you're looking for free support to implement what you've learned today and beyond, I invite you to join our Inspired Mama group on Facebook. It's a fantastic community where my team and I nurture and support busy working women just like you on your journey to a more balanced life and fulfilling life. Remember, ladies, that these small changes can lead to really big results. Start implementing these strategies today and watch how they can transform your energy levels and your overall well-being. I want to thank you again for your time and your attention, and here's to us all becoming burnout proof and living our most inspired lives.